Hey guys, got the saws lined up here. One thing I haven't covered yet in my other videos is how to check your 45-degree detents on your saw to make sure that they're actually cutting at 45 degrees. It's actually a pretty simple process, so I'm going to just go through it on the 3 saws I use on site right now and check all of them at the same time. And you can actually do it with the same pieces of wood, just moving down the line. You just cut them shorter each time. But first thing you want to do, I have a joiner, so I ran these through the joiner, got one edge nice and straight, and then you want to rip the other edge so that all of these are at the exact same width and that these are running perfectly parallel. That's going to ensure that my cuts are as dialed in as they can be, and I'm actually going to see the results that are correct whenever I go and put this picture frame together. So to start off, what we're actually going to do, we're going to move the saw over to 45, and I'm going to cut 45-degree cuts on both sides of these blocks. The important thing is you have to cut all of your cuts on the same side. You're not going to cut it here and then swing it over the other way. To check this detent, I need to make all the cuts on this side. So if you think about it, if this is actually 45 degrees, then I'm going to make all the 2 cuts on all 4 of these pieces, and then I'm going to put them together like a picture frame, and they're all going to be nice and tight. Now let's say I've actually got my detent off and it's 45.1 degrees. Then what's going to happen is 45 plus 45 is 90. Obviously you add that all up, it's going to be 360. But if you're 45.1, you're going to be 90.2. So then whenever you go around and put all of your 4 corners together, you're going to have gaps, and that's going to tell you that your detent is off, and then you can adjust accordingly. So to get started, the first thing I'm going to do is get a clamp and get a stop block. Because the other important thing is they have to be cut the exact same length perfectly. So I'm going to set up a stop block and start cutting. Alright, so I've got my clamp and a block here, but the first thing that I'm actually going to do is go ahead and make all of my cuts on one side first. Alright, so now that that's done, I have all my cuts here. What I'm actually going to do is flip these over and bump them into the stop block and make all the cuts this way now. Now the most important thing here is that I'm making sure I'm getting these pieces bumped into that stop block at the exact same spot. That way they are all the exact same length. If the length gets off on any of them, that's going to throw off my readings by gauging the gaps in the cuts whenever I put the picture frame together. So now what I want to do is, as best I can, look at these just to double check and make sure that they all came out the exact same length. As you can see, as I put them all together, they're very flush, and it looks like I got everything just right. So now we'll lay them flat on the table and see how everything looks. So as you can see, I actually need to do some work on this thing. In real practical life, putting together window mitered casings, even though I'm seeing these gaps, clamps squeeze that right out, but this could definitely be better and need some improvement. Giving you a little bit of a closer look, you can see got a slight gap here, but a pretty decent gap right here that's telling me that we could use a little bit more calibration work. So now, trying to exercise our carpentry common sense a little bit. If I've got gaps on the inside, what is that actually telling me? It's telling me that my cut is too steep, as in I'm taking too much off on the inside. It's telling me that my cut is probably actually 45.1 or something like that. If my gap was on the outside and I was tight on the inside, it would be the opposite. My cut would not be steep enough and I would be more like 44.9 or whatever if my gap was on the outside. So what I'm actually going to do now is check the other side of the saw and see if it's actually reversed. It wouldn't surprise me if it's reversed and I end up with my gaps on the outside on the other side of the saw. Being that I have all of these cut the same length with angles on them now, I'm going to go ahead and mark one side to help me make sure I don't mix anything up as I'm cutting these. Alright, check my lengths again. That looks really good. So the results of this test on the other side are exactly what I expected. We were too steep on this side, which would indicate that whenever we'd go on the other side, that would be too shallow. And on this side, on the 45 detent, we had gaps on the inside, and sure enough, now that we're over on the other side, we've got gaps on the outside. What that tells me is that my entire detent plate is not quite square. It needs to go over just a hair because this side and that side are in agreement on where they're off. First thing I'm going to do here is move that out of the way, and I'm going to loosen the screw only on the 0. Now I'm going to let it lock back into the 0 detent, and very carefully I'm going to override the detent. So that is no longer locked in there. If I bump this, it's going to move, which is what I don't want. So putting it back, unlocking it. Now I'm going to watch my gauge and try and move this whole plate about 1/10 of a degree. So now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but if you look at the 0, I'm about 1/10 of a degree off now. So what happens is whenever I re-engage my detent, now I should be back on 0, now that that's engaged again. So now that I've readjusted my plate, it's time to start cutting these again. I've got making sure I've got them oriented the correct way. Start by making my cuts on this side first. So this gives you an idea of the level of micro adjustment that you need to make. Before, on this side, my gaps were on the inside. I tried to only move it 1/10 of a degree, but now my gap is on the outside, so I've actually gone too far, which would indicate that my saw was actually only off 1/2 of a 1/10 of a degree. So not very much, but I'm going to try and adjust it again so that we can get this perfect. All right, third time's the charm. Alright guys, so that's my third shot, and this is actually pretty good. I have just a tiny little bit back here on this side, but otherwise everything's nice and tight, and you've seen just trying to adjust it 1/2 of a 1/10 to get to this point. I'm not going to try and mess with it anymore because it's probably going to be pretty difficult. But that's good enough, and that's how you do it. So that's how you do the picture frame test. I hope that helped you guys out. I'm going to keep moving down the line, just keep using these same pieces, and check these two saws as well while I'm at it.